Hello, Elise. Thank you very much for participating in this conversation. I really appreciate your time and possibility to talk to you and share with the rest of the world your fantastic success, your story about your child, how you've been fighting autism and your journey, because I think it's very inspiring and very educational for many people.
Thank you for having me.
Please do tell us a little bit about yourself, about your fantastic son, how he's doing now, and then we just take step by step and try to, share maybe certain experiences which might be especially beneficial for other people who are going through that, problem right now.
Sure. So my son is 17 years old, and he was diagnosed with autism when he was just 2 years old. I, however, really felt that there was a problem as early as 3 months old. I just knew that something wasn't right. So that when I would go to my pediatrician and say, I think something's off, Spencer doesn't really make eye contact. He has very little interest in toys. He seems to sort of stare off into space. Doesn't seem normal. And then you get, well, don't compare your child. What's normal when they're being
Yes, everybody is different.
Yes. Everybody's different.
Just wait, he will be fine.
He'll be fine. Everybody develops at different speeds.
Yes, sure.
So, so you kind of talk yourself into believing that. But really, I have to say my motherly instincts definitely kicked in, and I knew something was wrong. So my state, I live in the state of Florida, has testing for children if there are any concerns with speech, gross motor skills, things like that, occupational therapy, and psychological things. So this fell into that. And he was seen by a psychologist, and a barrage of tests were done. The best thing and the worst thing is, a mother's always right. The best thing is I'm right and I know my child, and the worst part was I was right and I knew my child, and something was wrong.
Yes, I think it's a very good point. Just let me just really sort of summarize that part. So I think even now we've got much more technologies in place, and we know about more autism. But I think the first thing, it's a gut feeling and intuition. You as a mother, you really shouldn't ignore, and that's always would be the best ever test for something going with my child. Should I go and test? Should I question it again and again? I think that's really, powerful number one message we can draw at that point.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It is. It's very important. And I think that as much as we'd like to quiet those voices in our heads as parents, because we really don't want anything to be wrong, by the same token, I was so desperate to fix it and help him that there was sort of a sense of relief also when I did finally receive that diagnosis, because then I had an action plan and I could start to make things better. So as devastating as it was, and it was, because you have to mourn the loss of having a typical child and all of the dreams and hopes that you have for your babies when they're born, and they're gonna play football and be this and be all those great things that we weren't. And so you have to sort of let go of that. But after I did that, that was when I went into mom mode. And within a week of his diagnosis, I had a team of therapists in my home. And Spencer was receiving speech. He was receiving occupational therapy. He had tremendous sensory issues. And we got him started immediately in ABA. And
so just a quick sort of sum up here. So I think what you really was great about, so that your fear, it didn't overcome you. So you said, diagnosis actually helped me to identify my enemy straight away and make the action plan, which is, when we don't waste our time for going through sort of a sadness and being guilty for whatever reasons, but actually start to do something about it. It can be much more proactive. We can save lots of time.
So that was really where I started. I started, and those were provided for me by the state of Florida. And then I expanded on what was given to me and privately hired an ABA therapist. And she came in my home and was there for 30 hours. And again, you know, we did not have what we have in place now in terms of schooling and you know, therapies and things like that. So everything that I did was out of pocket. And I had to, because again, this was 15 and a half years ago, I had to educate all of the schools that Spencer went to. Nobody had seen anything.
I guess that was very intensive and different methods which were available at that point you applied. And I think we talked a little bit about before. Could you just reinforce this message about choosing one method over another, and what is your experience about sort of this particular topic?
Yeah, so I have to say, having the opponent as autism, I always wanted to find the easiest way to sort of knock that opponent out. And you know, oh, we're gonna get rid of sensory, and we're gonna immerse Spencer's hands in sand, and I'm gonna brush his body, and we're gonna do all of those things, and we're gonna give him language, and we're gonna get to pragmatics, and we're gonna do ABA. And Spencer had intense hearing, and we thought that was getting in the way of things. And so I did auditory training, and each one of these things I always thought was my magic bullet, and it was going to be the thing that was going to quote unquote fix Spencer. And by saying fix, I think it's important to know that with Spencer and his diagnosis came a tremendous amount of what I guess in the therapy world would be called non-preferred behaviors. And, you know, a lot of temper tantrums, all kinds of things. And I always thought this is going to be the thing that cures those temper tantrums. And what I learned along the way is that as helpful as these therapies are, and certainly my son would not be where he is today, the only magic bullet was me following through on all of these therapies. And so I sat in on all of Spencer's therapies, even to this day at 17. Because I realized that even if his ABA therapist was with him for 20 hours a week, there was still way more than 20 hours I was with him. And if they were teaching him how to sequence things, or how to do first, then next, or a bucket goes with a shovel, I needed to learn how to do that too. I had to take that into the rest of our life. Same thing with speech, same thing with OT. And once I started to incorporate all of those things and understand that I was sort of the answer to the behavioral problems, and that I needed to change my reaction and actions towards Spencer, that was when a lot of things really turned around for us.
Wow. So, you know, can I just stop you for a second? And I really like what you said. So the magic bullet, you lots of parents looking for, they actually need to find in themselves. And I think this is very beautifully phrased, because I think it's very powerful. It really depends on the parents and how they perceive and how persistent they are, how proactive they are. And you know, it's basically, I know, you know, lots of parents in this situation tired and overwhelmed, and they've got lots of issues, but just by thinking about how they can prioritize correctly their time and thinking, okay, all my force is just going to my child, because it's very valuable point. When they're young, we can do so much. And then once you return your life back, so you can afford yourself, you know, much more. It's absolutely rewarding.
I never stopped. And that's not to say that I didn't suffer with depression, anxiety, and that
it is understandable. Yes,
it didn't affect me, and it didn't affect my marriage, and all of those things. It certainly did. But Spencer was my child. He was my responsibility.
Was your responsibility, as you said earlier, and was your mission, if you want. So everything else probably, you know, you left behind temporarily, because he was really on the focus of your life, and you basically could do it, and probably family supported you, and obviously results quite fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it is so important to have your family support you. And I needed that team. I did need them. I couldn't be on my own. I needed, you know, a psychiatrist monitoring the meds. I needed a psychologist. I needed an ABA person. You know, those people all had a very specific role in his life.
Of course, absolutely. So how long did it take you actually to support in that intensive manner Spencer, and what, you know, is he out of autism right now? How long did it take?
Okay, so Spencer was diagnosed just at the age of 2.
Yes.
And he was in very intensive treatment from the ages of 2 to 6. And, you know, would literally sit at a table for hours doing his ABA book and, you know, what goes next and this and that. And there's a lot of guilt that parents feel. Where's my child's, you know, little baby toddlerhood? They're sitting at a table, but this is really where they need to be in order to have a childhood. And I think that's also very, very important, because if that intervention didn't take place, my son would still be staring at vents and fans, and that's no life. That childhood, that's just no life. So the intense intervention took place for about 4 years. And then he went off to school, and he went to a regular kindergarten, and it was not appropriate for him. He has extreme ADHD, and I was very hesitant to put him on any type of medication because we had a very bad experience with it when he was 2. He was medicated for his anxiety and OCD with Zoloft, and became suicidal at the age of 4. And the doctor knew this and said to me, you know, Elise, this isn't about you and your fear. This is about Spencer, and you have to put yourself aside, and there are going to be decisions that you have to make that you have fear with, but that you just keep moving forward. And this is going to affect his confidence. He can't complete any work. You need to think about him. So I took that to heart, and I always really tried to put Spencer in front of my needs, and thought about it long and hard, and decided to medicate him with it. And we put him in a special school, and not for autism, but just learning disabilities. And he shined, and he flew, and he did fantastic. And didn't have really any therapy at that point. You know, we're talking social skills groups, stuff like that. We were working more on social and pragmatic language, things like that. Then I brought in a therapist who was working on Spencer's social, and he said, Spencer needs to be in a mainstream school. He's not being challenged, and I feel that this is going to be a deficiency for him as he gets older. He's not going to be able to really move forward. So we switched him into a regular school, and we had everything set up, waiting for him to sort of fall, and it still wasn't enough, because his brain sort of became dormant in this program, because he just was not utilized. He was not challenged at all.
Yeah.
Spencer was really just paralyzed for the first semester of his 6th grade year, and it was very difficult again in that time for us. We had to retrain his brain, and we had a lot of support at the time, but again, it took a tremendous amount of support on our end. After the tutors left and the executive, and again, I sat in on all of this. How is she teaching my son to read with comprehension? Because she's not here all the time.
Yes, of
So
course.
I sat and I listened. And then when she left, we were up till 11 o'clock every night, 13 hours on the weekend. And finally it all stopped. And then Spencer flew.
Wow.
And so.
Again, very hard work paid back. Yes.
Hard
24/7 support, and not just being there, but actually providing that active support, because you're learning all the time from professionals, and bring it back and challenge him again and support him again and challenge again. I think this is, you know, you somehow intuitively find the right balance, how far you can sort of push the child, and also support at the same time that he doesn't feel, you know, just challenged in front of lots of problems by himself.
Right.